Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate Breakdown for Wednesday, September 20th. We are back. We are breaking down today's slate. We're going to go over yesterday's slate with the perfect lineup and the winning lineups, then get into pitching ownership and pitchers to consider, followed by some stacks for baseball and stack ownership. Now, before we get into it, come join us at LineStar. It is only $39.99 a month. This is the best time of the year for DFS. Basketball starts in a month. We got hockey right around the corner. NFL's in full swing. Baseball, we're coming into the playoffs here. All the sports are going. We love it. Let's go. All right. Now, perfect lineup time. So yesterday's perfect lineup has a guy that I said on the show that I don't want anything to do with in it. Javier Assad went absolutely nuts, was low priced, and he was the key to victory yesterday. So I'm sorry if I talked him off for you guys. He got there. Blake Snell also got there, absolutely dominated. And then a little two-man Baltimore stack for the perfect lineup. Then Ladino got it done on DK with Snell and Assad, so he had that perfect combo there for pitchers, and a Baltimore and Cleveland stack. A good old 4-4 stack got it done, so congrats to him. Now let's check out the FanDuel lineup quickly. Assad, once again, and then it was a one-off. A ton of salary was left over on FanDuel's perfect lineup, but we know we can't look too much into that because the winning lineup rarely is leaving much on the table. Now, Orioles 89 won it, and it was very fitting because he did have a three-man Baltimore stack that got it done. Also paid up for Zach Gallen, who didn't do much, but he just nailed the hitters. All of his hitters outside of Luis Robert were extremely low owned. So this lineup, got it done, and it was extremely contrarian. So congrats to the Orioles 89. You won, and making it even better, you won with the Orioles stack. Love to see it. All right. Now, let's get into today's slate, shall we? Get over to the ownership and pitching, and on to the night slate. So, one of the things I do have to bring up here is that the two slates for the night are a little bit different on FanDuel and DraftKings. The FanDuel one is starting at 3:40 and has those games involved, whereas DraftKings does not. So we're going to go over both a little bit. And because FanDuel has the extra games, we'll actually do the stacking on there today instead of on DraftKings. All right, so Justin Steele, highest owned pitcher. Next, we got Gausman and Bobby Miller. Those are the three obvious pitchers on this slate. Michael King is getting a ton of ownership also, and he's been very good lately. The one thing is that he does not work into games. He does have some nice strikeout upside, though, so you absolutely can consider him against a tough Toronto team, which he has done very well against in the past. He is a little interesting, and because he is so cheap, it will allow you to get to some extra bats or to pay up for Gausman, who I definitely like a little bit more than I do Justin Steele. Gausman has been good all season, not quite as good over the last, second half as he was in the first, but nonetheless, he's been great. 29% K rate, 3.28 FIP. Lately, a FIP of 4, but I don't really hold that against him. He now is facing the Yankees, who aren't good versus righties. Below a 300 WOBA, 23% K rate, 26.7% combined K rate. I think Gausman's in a fine spot. To get into Steele, Steele has been unbelievable lately. That K rate has been higher. His FIP is high twos. Combined K rate 27%. Makes a lot of sense that he is going so high owned when the Pirates are also striking out at 29% on our terrible versus lefties. And I did say I like Gausman better. I'm going to take that back. I do like Steele better. On paper, I think Steele makes a little more sense. LineStar also likes him better. So I'm going to have to ride with Steele on that one. Next, we got Bobby Miller in a good matchup versus the Tigers. So, we have these three pitchers, all high owned, all in good matchups. All on paper look pretty good. The one thing I do have to bring up is that Miller does not have the strikeout upside as the other two guys, but he is cheaper. So with that, he is, interesting in his own right. Zach Thompson is someone that I would be slightly interested in as a lower owned pivot. He does have some strikeout upside, but just like yesterday, this Brewers team is much better versus lefties. And so that is a little bit of my reservation. However, Thompson is way better at home, 50% more fantasy points at home. Keller is the kind of obvious pivot here in the same game environment as Steele, 7.5 point over under. Keller, when he is on, he's really on, and he's been on lately, 2.85 FIP over his last 5 starts. One of those of which he went against the Cubs, and he went 8 innings, 6 Ks, no earned runs. So he has done well versus them in the past, but he isn't doing as well at or away, and he's away today, averaging 24% less fantasy points. So I think Keller is interesting. He is, a low-owned pivot off some of those higher-owned guys if you want to pivot off. Now let's get over to FanDuel. All right, so FanDuel does have the 340 game in, but it does not have the Dodgers game in, which is a late night game. Don't really know why these, two sites are doing it so much differently, but they are. So Kevin Gausman is the high owned at 38%. Justin Steele next at 29%. Both of them look great. And then we got Kodai Senga here versus the Marlins, who they're okay versus righties, but not great. Senga is doing worse while away, 28% fantasy point or percent less fantasy points while away. But Senga, I think, is very, very interesting. So his FIP is right around 3 for both last 20 and last 5 starts. His K rate over the last 5 starts is up to 34%. Guy has been very good. That ghost fork is working. I think he is very interesting, way lower owned, and similar K rate. When you have 3 guys with a very similar combined K rate, all around the same price, it's really just which one, gets those strikeouts and doesn't, give up as many runs. And I really do think Senga has just as good of a chance as Steele or Gausman. He isn't in as good of a matchup, but his matchup isn't that bad, and so he is very interesting. Savali is also kind of interesting as a cheaper option. You could, you're going against the Angels, who have been absolutely terrible lately. So you got that. You're also paying a lot less in salary, so maybe you can get some higher bats, which would differentiate yourself a little bit as well. Now let's jump into some stacks here. We do have the extra team on FanDuel, or the extra game. The one thing I will say about this before we get it fully into, on DraftKings, I absolutely like the Dodgers stacks versus Olsen. So I would absolutely consider taking them if you're playing on DraftKings. I think especially the lefties look real good versus Olsen. All right. So highest owned, we got Tampa Bay versus Detmers. With that being said, I think Detmers is a little bit of an interesting option as a leverage pitcher, just because he does have a decent K rate and can rack up those Ks when he gets it done. When he's not, however, lets a lot of guys on base, walks a lot of guys, has right around a league average FIP. Tampa Bay can definitely get to him. I think this one could go both ways, but I'm not in love with Tampa Bay being the highest owned stack. Next, we got the Cardinals versus Hauser. Hauser's been good lately, but he can get got. And this Cardinals offense, when it gets rolling, gets really rolling. The Brewers, they are good versus lefties. Zach Thompson is a lefty. He is just an average MLB pitcher, so major league hitters can get to them absolutely. Yankees versus Kevin Gausman. I am actually very surprised to see the Yankees are still this high owned against Gausman when Gausman is a high owned pitcher. I don't love it at that ownership. You're just not getting the leverage that you should. I do like the Cubs versus Keller. I think that's interesting. Cubs really need to start hitting the ball again. They are 3-7 over their last 10. They're hanging on to the wild card spot, but they need to start stringing some wins together to actually hang on to it. Now, our highest projected, we got the Mets versus Yuri Perez. Perez is a great pitcher, but they are limiting how many pitches he can throw. And with that, he's really only working through the fourth inning. So you have a lot of time versus the bullpen, which I think is interesting. The Mets are also cheap, allowing you to pay up for pitchers. So they are interesting. Cubs, we talked about. Pirates versus Steele. I don't love going against Steele. It is a leverage stack, though. So with that, they do warrant some consideration. Toronto versus Michael King. King's been great, but he's not going to work deep into games either. And we know Toronto is a solid offense, so it is a little interesting there. Value-wise, Mets, Pirates, Milwaukee, all of them make sense. And Miami versus Senega. Senega was, getting hit pretty well earlier in the season. Not so much anymore. But it is a nice little stack just because nobody's going there. We're on a 5-game slate. You're going to have to figure out how to get different somewhere. You could do worse than stacking in Miami. Ceiling-wise, Miami is popping up, which is very, very interesting considering it's against Senega. Brewers versus Thompson. Cubs versus Keller. All make some pretty good sense there. So highest implied total teams, Tampa Bay, Brewers, and the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are probably going a little under-owned in their spot, as well as the Cubs and Miami. All are interesting, though. It is going to be an interesting, weird 5-game slate, 4 on DraftKings. Try to get a little different. Don't do what everybody else is doing. It is just much harder to win when you're fighting the entire field than just a portion of it. All right, guys, have a good one. I will be back with a MLB show on Friday and with an NFL one for tomorrow's game. All right, guys, have a good one. See you soon. Good luck.